All right, thank you,
Morning.
everyone. Strive just got here, so we're very happy to have you here, Strive. How you doing?
I'm just about to wake up.
Okay, this will wake you up, I think. I think it'll be good.
Hopefully.
So Strive, thank you for starting off our second day today. So this session is talking about connecting Africa's next generation, and you're, of course, the perfect person for that, because for more than 2 decades, you've been dedicated to this. And so I wanted to start with this statistic that I found to be really interesting. Internet use in sub-Saharan Africa went from 1% in 2000 to 30% in 2022 to now roughly 40%. Some people might call that progress. Curious what you would call it.
Progress. That's as good progress as you're going to get anywhere in the world. You know, sometimes people beat us up in Africa, but we're making a lot of progress.
Why isn't it higher, though?
It's a big continent, a lot of work. But if you look at it this way, there are now more than 500 million smartphones on the African continent, which is more than the US, Canada, more than Europe. So we're connecting a lot of people very quickly, but it's hard work.
Talk about that, because you and your team have been expanding all across the continent, most recently in North Africa. And most recently, I was seeing into cybersecurity and cloud computing. Can you talk about why that gets the continent closer to full connectivity? Why is that your focus right now?
Well, first of all, Jennifer, you know, I've been working in Africa's communications and telecommunications industry for some 35 years now.
Yeah.
And I was really fortunate to have been part of the initial wave, the mobile industry. But, you know, things move on. Technology goes forward, and it's moving very rapidly. For the last 20 years, our own business has pivoted to digital infrastructure. So we began by building fiber. You know, first of all, we used to be the biggest satellite providers on the continent, and we had tens of thousands of satellite earth stations. Then fiber came along, and we could move large volumes of data. And we realized that we didn't have the plumbing on the continent. Even your mobile phone, your smartphone, needs fiber in the background. So we thought, well, let's do it. So we built a fiber. We dug along the highways from Cape Town all the way to Harare in Zimbabwe, all the way to Lubumbashi in southern DRC. We turned east, and we gently made our way to Cairo. So we've now built 110,000 kilometers of fiber across the continent. So we've linked up most of the countries now. But with that comes additional infrastructure, such as data centers. So we're the biggest builders of high-capacity data centers on the continent. And we also do the cloud provision. Right. So it's all part and parcel of putting in place the digital infrastructure on which the services are then built.
And you talked last year about how you wanted to raise $500 million in order to invest in a lot of this expansion that you've had. We heard from US President Joe Biden about a commitment to build data centers. And I know you've said that the continent needs patient capital and needs people to really commit to expansion. Was that investment by the US sort of what you were talking about, or is there more needed to expand in the ways that you're hoping for?
Well, look, like any entrepreneur, you're always raising capital. We probably have raised about $1 billion now for data centers, of which about $300 million came from the US sovereign fund. Development Finance Corporation. We got money from PIC, the South African, British. We've got a lot of long-term capital from sovereigns. And we're still raising it. So if there are any sovereigns, I'm ready for the money. Just give it to me. I'll bury it in cables right here.
Here in Morocco?
Yeah, we're going to build some data centers here too. So we are building a lot of high-capacity data centers to take in your big hyperscale services from people like Google, AWS, Microsoft. They're all warehoused with us. And that's part of the digital infrastructure that you need, even for your streaming services like Netflix and so forth. So we've been quietly putting those on the ground as well.
How are you working with governments to do that? We were talking about Angola in the back. I mean, what is the public-private relationship that you're having, especially considering a lot of governments are changing at this point in time? I mean, how is it that you're continuing this progress despite a lot of the issues that a lot of countries are going through?
Look, we have boots on the ground in 31 African countries, okay? Only Coca-Cola can say more than that. Okay, we put people on the ground, we build in these countries. And, as long as we are welcome, as long as there's an enabling environment, we're a private company. We don't ask for government capital. We don't participate in government tenders. We build as a private company. So we don't take money from governments, we just build. If governments have sovereigns that want to invest, that's great. But this is all private. We laid all that fiber across this continent as a private company. Of course, we come into markets like Morocco here, where we didn't have to build anything, but we still partner with people like Morocco Telecom to see how we can integrate their network into our overall infrastructure. Because we want the whole of Africa to talk to each other. They've got to be connected. And I'm just Africa's plumber.
You're just?
I'm the plumber.
Come on.
You know? I'm just laying the pipes in the ground, That's all I do.
I don't think anyone would refer to you as a plumber, but
yeah,
if you'll say that, then we'll take that. So Strive, how far off is this continent really from all being interconnected in the way that you really envisioned 30-something years ago?
Hey, when I got into this industry, and I always, it's almost a cliche now, less than 1%. In fact, I used to have a data point I used to share that 75% of the people had never heard a phone ringing. Just think about it. I didn't say had never used a phone. They'd never heard it ringing. Today, 75% of the African people have a mobile phone. They use one, okay? And we will do the same with the internet in the next 5 years. We will do it as an industry, as entrepreneurs. All we need is the space. And we need investment support because we are the best investment case for this in the world.
And, we are seeing a number of projects in addition to yourself. Of course, Elon Musk and Starlink are trying to do a lot of connectivity here on the continent. But when you talk about investment, where is the capital still needed? What are investors maybe not realizing where they should be channeling their money?
Look, throughout the whole value chain. So you've got players like us, obviously, in digital infrastructure. We also do digital services. Now, whether you're talking about cloud, we do cybersecurity because we have to protect Africa's data. But now there is the opportunity around artificial intelligence. Yeah. It's here, it's now. We're building for that too. So the whole value chain, for example, e-commerce probably hasn't taken off to the extent that it should have in Africa. We've got to sort out the payment systems so that the entrepreneurs can build proper e-commerce on the continent. So Africa is not exotic. It's not outside the world. It's part of the world. So whatever is going on in the world, Africa is absolutely a part of it.
What exactly with AI are you building? I mean, especially because we're seeing a lot of developed countries around the world really tap into AI. What potential do you think Africa has to be a part of this revolution?
Look, in the next 10 years, it is estimated that AI will add anything up to $30 trillion to global GDP. Just think about that. In just the last 6 months, 4 US companies have added more than $4 trillion to their own market capitalization. So AI is here, and it's here now. Now it's here in several respects. One is what is popularly referred to as infusion, in the sense that it will infuse through everything we do. So it doesn't matter what business you are. In telecommunications, for instance, we have a lot of data, we have a lot of services. We want to leverage AI to improve the performance of our services, to create new products. Then there is just the emergence of new services and products. Look at it this way. If you were to compare where we are with AI, with the internet, Google hasn't yet been born. Facebook is not yet born. The AI equivalents have not yet been born. There are going to be some extraordinary new companies. We won't be talking of big tech. We'll be talking of big AI. The question for Africa is, can we be a part of it? Absolutely, we have to be a part of it. So, it's for Africa's young entrepreneurs to get going.
And for anyone who doesn't know, Strive, you have a very active Facebook social presence. Is that safe to say? Somewhat.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, okay. Well, you mentioned young entrepreneurs. You spend a lot of time advising and guiding young entrepreneurs about what they can do, how they should move throughout the world to find success. When we talk about the next generation of Africa's workforce, we talk about AI, we talk about what's happening across the world. I mean, what is it that the next generation here on the continent can do, considering how far a lot of these other countries are? I mean, how can they keep up while the continent is still really playing catch up to what a lot of the developed economies have already established?
No, thank you for that. I have about 6 million followers on Facebook.
You do?
And I
don't.
I blog. And actually, Facebook say that my followers are amongst the most engaged in the world.
Okay.
And they're all entrepreneurs.
See? There we go.
Okay. And they are not behind. They're ahead. Africa is teeming with entrepreneurs. Okay. It's us, governments and policymakers and the elders and investors. We're not trusting them. So we have to get behind them. And let me tell you, you're going to see some incredible African enterprises emerge in the next few years. Of that, I have no doubt. So I believe in our young people. But I always say to them, perspective is extremely important. This is a business meeting, so what's the perspective? Africa is a continent of 1.3 billion people. Okay? In the last 25 years, our GDP has gone up from 350 billion to 3 trillion. We're one of the fastest expanding regions in the world. Only China expanded faster than us in that period. Okay? Do you see that Africa? Yes, we have a lot of challenges. Who doesn't? Europe has a war in the middle of Europe right now. you know. So we all have challenges, okay? And each generation has to address and take on those challenges. But Africa also has extraordinary opportunities. So I talk to these young people about reminding them that the glass is really, in their case, not even half full, but 3/4 full. Okay? There is just so much opportunity for them to take on the challenges of this continent. They're better educated than anyone before them. They're better connected. They are more conscious of their challenges, and they're more confident than any generation before. So yes, I'm very confident, and I love exchanging ideas and kind of learning from them. Actually, I'm the one learning from them.
Well, on the other side of it, your peers, other investors you mentioned, governments, are they receptive? I mean, you mentioned that you are trusting of this next generation, but are you seeing enough of your peers then be receptive to the eagerness of this next generation? And what is it that you tell them in your discussions?
Well, I to the extent that people listen to me, I talk to some of the leaders about creating the right ecosystem. We have the potential, but potential doesn't happen by itself, doesn't realize by itself. One of the big challenges we have on the African continent, as I'm sure you discussed yesterday, we're not seeing enough foreign direct investment. Right. Okay. Our foreign FDI is below that of Singapore, which has 4 million people. Okay. And I know Singapore punches above its weight, but goodness me, we need to really see capital flows. So we need to have serious discussions with the global investment community. What do you want us to do? What should we be doing that will make you more comfortable to invest in us? Because it's a two-way communication. So I led a delegation of technocrats at the US-Africa Summit. Again, I was the plumber working in the background. But we really engaged our US partners about what we should do to try and improve investment flows. We need to see venture capital come into Africa. The young people can't build the businesses they need to build from loans. Silicon Valley would sink if it relied on bank loans. We need venture capital. And we need domestic capital. We need to mobilize our own savings. We've seen how China has moved with mobilizing its own savings. And we have savings. We have insurance. We have pension funds. We need to see them beginning to take steps, and it will require policy. Okay, that will see capital flows that are more willing to take risk in the entrepreneurs that are there.
Are you seeing that now? The policy that you're talking about?
Early days.
Where specifically are you?
I said it's early days. I don't like to talk in terms of specific countries and regions, because then when I go there, they beat me up. Sometimes they won't let me in.
I doubt that.
I'm getting old now.
I doubt it still.
I'm not that fighter anymore,
No. Yeah.
But there's some areas where they're taking some real steps. There's a lot of good leaders out there who are listening, and doing some interesting things.
So you are optimistic that in the near term, the next generation of the African workforce can really be a competitor to places like China, to places like the US. Is that your viewpoint?
let me put it this way. We have no option. We have to be. If we don't do that, what are we going to do with all these young people? So we have to invest not only in the ecosystem, but we have to invest in skills. It's not just about education anymore. So we have to put a lot more into skills. That's why, a couple of weeks ago, I went to Zambia. And in fact, I met the president of Zambia on the sidelines of a conference in Qatar. And we agreed that we would connect all their high schools. So we've mapped some 2,000 high schools. And we found that about 500 of them are within 500 meters of our fiber network in Zambia. So we've begun to connect them. But we've already done that in places like Zimbabwe. We've done that in Kenya. We're working with governments to make sure colleges and schools. We have some 55 tech hubs across the continent that we support with fiber, with broadband access. So why are we doing that? Because we've got to make it easier for these young people. But that's a drop to what needs to be done.
Right.
So it needs to be happening at all the different levels. So it's about skills. If we don't win on skills, particularly, we've got to just make it clear. We've got to teach maths. We've got to teach technology in schools, because that is how China did it. That is how India is doing it. I'm not saying let's not do the arts and dance and everything else, but it's critical that we teach maths in our schools. Right. And we drive skills. Things like coding and so forth. These are going to be standard education. In places like Hong Kong, they're teaching 5-year-olds how to code. So are you going to compete with that if you don't get going? It's not hard. But let's not dance around it and make slogans and speeches. Let's go out and do it. Let's get the kids in schools with skills. And when we get down to skills, even plumbing is a good skill. Just make sure that the kid has a good skill. It's terrible when we have to bring in tilers from India or from Italy in order to tile a hotel in Africa. Come on. We've got to get those basic skills in, electricians. And the new stuff, putting in things like solar panels, and these are new skill areas which will give our kids decent, dignified jobs for the future.
We'll strive. Thank you so much for your time. I'm still not going to call you a plumber, but really appreciate the work you're doing on the continent. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, and God bless.
Thanks.